Black man is arrested, but when the police discover who he is, they are shocked. In the comfort of his home, Thierry Dupont, a respected judge, was with his 10-year-old son, Lucas. The calm of the night was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. "Stay here, son," Thierry said, standing up with a dark premonition. Opening the door, he was greeted by officers led by Captain Pierre Dubois. "Thierry Dupont, you are under arrest for corruption and conspiracy," Dubois announced. Thierry's eyes widened in surprise and indignation. "This is a mistake," he replied. "I have the right to know what I'm being accused of." Before he could react, the police handcuffed him in front of Lucas, who now stood at the door, eyes filled with tears. "Dad, what's happening?" the boy asked, voice trembling. Thierry smiled faintly. "Everything will be all right, Lucas. Trust me," he said as he was led away. As Thierry was taken away, Pauline Martin, an investigative journalist, watched the scene with interest. She was in the middle of an investigation into police and political corruption. With a keen instinct for news, she began recording the arrest with her phone. In a luxurious office, corrupt businessman Antoine Leblanc smiled at the news of Thierry's arrest. He knew Thierry, a strict judge, was an obstacle to his corrupt plans. Framing him was the only way to ensure the continuation of his illicit businesses. Captain Dubois, convinced of Thierry's guilt, led the operation firmly. However, seeing Thierry's genuine reaction, a doubt began to arise. His eyes flickered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Inside the patrol car, a young officer named Jacques looked at Thierry with admiration. "He is Judge Dupont," he murmured. "The man who fought against corruption for years. How could he be involved in this?" His more experienced colleague shook his head. Nothing is what it seemed," he replied. But the doubt was planted. Soon after Thierry's arrest, headlines dominated the newspapers and news channels. "A corrupt judge exposed," blared the front page of one of the country's biggest newspapers. In front of the police station, a crowd of journalists awaited. When Thierry was led out of the police car, camera flashes momentarily blinded him. He tried to keep his head up, but the shame and despair were evident in his eyes. Reporters shouted questions. "How do you feel being a traitor to your own system? Do you deny all the charges?" Thierry remained silent, knowing any word could be twisted. The crowd murmured, some pointing accusing fingers. The public humiliation was crushing. Being a black man in a position of power increased the hostility and prejudice in media and public reactions. He felt the weight of judging eyes, each camera flash a direct blow to his dignity. Pauline Martin began to dig deeper. The speed at which evidence surfaced against Thierry raised suspicions. In her small office, Pauline typed frantically, cross-referencing information and revisiting reliable sources. She knew something was not right. The next morning, her article was published. Framed Judge, Hoax or Truth? In it, Pauline questioned the validity of the charges and suggested Thierry might be a victim of a conspiracy. The article quickly spread on social media, generating heated debates and dividing opinions. Pauline's courage brought hope to those who believed in Thierry's innocence. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, with people offering support and others making veiled threats. While Thierry faced public shame, Antoine Leblanc was at a lavish event, surrounded by influential politicians and businessmen. "Hey, we did it, gentlemen," Antoine said with a confident smile. "Thierry Dupont is out of our way. Now we can continue our business without interference." The others toasted in response, laughing and exchanging complicit glances. Antoine knew the battle was far from over, but that moment of triumph was sweet. He was confident he had taken every precaution to ensure Thierry wouldn't recover easily. Meanwhile, Lucas's life turned into a nightmare. At school, he was the target of cruel jokes and relentless bullying. "Your father is a criminal," one of the boys shouted, pushing Lucas against a locker. "Are you just like him?" another mocked. Teachers tried to intervene, but the situation was out of control. Lucas felt alone and helpless. The laughter and insults echoed in his mind, and he avoided eye contact with anyone. Each day at school was torture, and he wondered if life would ever return to normal. Racial prejudice exacerbated Lucas's suffering, making him feel even more isolated. He began to have nightmares and lose interest in things he once loved, the emotional pressure crushing him daily. Marie Durand, Thierry's friend and defense attorney, began investigating the evidence. In her office, Piles of documents and reports were scattered around. Marie analyzed every detail, looking for inconsistencies. Talking to witnesses and revisiting evidence, Marie found details that didn't fit. Contradictory testimonies and planted evidence began to emerge. With each new discovery, her determination grew. She knew proving Thierry's innocence would be a monumental task, but she was willing to go to the end. The pressure was intense, but friendship and justice gave Marie the strength she needed to continue. She spent sleepless nights reviewing every line of testimony and every piece of collected evidence. On the morning of the trial, the courtroom was packed. The buzz of conversations echoed off the walls. Thierry sat next to his lawyer, Marie Durand, watching every move in the courtroom closely. When the judge entered, silence fell instantly. Thierry could feel his heart pounding in his chest, as if he was facing a silent battle. Marie stood up with determination. "Your Honor, I would like to present a series of inconsistencies in the evidence against my client, Thierry Dupont," she began, handing documents to the judge. "The prosecution's witnesses have contradictory testimonies, and some evidence was clearly tampered with." She highlighted each point with precision, her voice clear and firm, as tension in the courtroom mounted. The judge's eyes, though attentive, revealed a disturbing impassivity. Pauline Martin continued her parallel investigation. One rainy afternoon, she received a phone call from an anonymous source. "I have something that might interest you about Judge Dupont's case," said the voice on the other end. Pauline met the source in a discreet cafe. The man, nervous, handed her an envelope. Back at her office, Pauline opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were documents showing suspicious bank transfers and intercepted conversations indicating a conspiracy to frame Thierry. Pauline knew this information could be key to Thierry's defense. She immediately contacted Marie to share the discovery. Her heart was racing, excitement mixed with a sense of urgency. Antoine Leblanc, increasingly nervous, called Julien Lefebvre, his accomplice, for a private meeting. "Julien, we must keep our story at all costs," Antoine said, his voice low and threatening. "If Thierry proves his innocence, we're finished." Julien, visibly uncomfortable, nodded. "I know, Antoine, but things are getting complicated." Marie is relentless, and Pauline found something. "I'm afraid everything will fall apart." Antoine grabbed Julien by the collar. "Then do whatever it takes to ensure it doesn't fall apart. Do you understand?" Julien swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the threat hanging over him. As pressure mounted, Captain Pierre Dubois began to question Thierry's guilt. At his desk, he reviewed reports and evidence again. Marie's dedication to highlighting inconsistencies and Pauline's courage in investigating beyond the surface planted seeds of doubt in his mind. Dubois, known for his sense of justice, couldn't ignore the signs of manipulation that began to emerge. He found himself reflecting on his actions and the speed with which he had accepted the evidence against Thierry. Am I making a mistake?" he thought, as the weight of his responsibilities pressed harder on his shoulders. Dubois' internal struggle became increasingly evident, his usually stern face now marked by worry lines. With each new discovery, his belief in the integrity of the investigations was shaken. In court, after Marie's presentation of inconsistencies, the prosecutor approached Thierry with a proposal. "If you accept a guilty plea, we can significantly reduce your sentence," he said, trying to appear reasonable. Thierry looked directly into the prosecutor's eyes, his determination unwavering. "I will not admit to something I didn't do. I'd rather fight for the truth," Thierry responded, his voice firm and full of conviction. Thierry's refusal to accept the deal only increased the tension in the courtroom. People murmured, surprised by his courage. The judge watched everything closely, his expression hard to decipher. Marie felt a chill as she realized the judicial system might be compromised. The judge's gaze sometimes seemed to avoid direct contact with her. Every movement and expression in the courtroom heightened the sense that larger forces were at play. Within the cold, damp walls of the prison, Thierry Dupont struggled to maintain his composure. News of his arrest had spread quickly among the inmates, many of whom he had personally sentenced. However, the situation worsened when Antoine Leblanc bribed guards and inmates to ensure Thierry was constantly targeted for assaults. One dark night, as Thierry tried to rest, he was awakened by the sound of heavy footsteps. Three inmates, accompanied by a corrupt guard, invaded his cell. "Time for payback, Judge," one of them growled. Thierry tried to defend himself, but the blows were swift and relentless. Each punch and kick was accompanied by insults and threats. The metallic smell of blood filled the air, and the searing pain in his body made each second feel like an eternity. While Thierry faced hell in prison, his son Lucas lived his own nightmare. Due to his father's situation and the lack of an immediate guardian, social services temporarily placed him in foster care. Lucas watched helplessly as he was separated from everything he knew, feeling abandoned and lost. In the new home, Lucas could barely sleep. The voices and laughter of the other foster children seemed distant and unreal. He constantly wondered when he could go home, to his father's arms. Each passing day increased the feeling of isolation and sadness, as if a part of his soul was being torn away. The room he was given felt cold and impersonal, and every object around him seemed to reinforce the distance between him and his previous life. Pauline Martin, determined to uncover the truth, intensified her investigations. The new material she had obtained revealed even more inconsistencies in the case against Thierry. Determined to make a difference, she wrote a more aggressive and revealing article. "A Conspiracy Against Justice, the Thierry Dupont Case," was the title of the article that shook public opinion. In it, Pauline detailed all the new discoveries, questioning the integrity of the investigations and pointing to a possible conspiracy. Reactions were explosive. While some still believed in Thierry's guilt, many began to doubt the official narrative. Pauline's courage brought a new wave of hope to those who believed in Thierry's innocence. Marie Durand finally found a key witness who could change the course of the case. In a small cafe, she met with a former employee of Antoine who was willing to talk. "And I can't live with this on my conscience anymore," he said nervously. "Antoine paid me to falsify evidence against Thierry." Marie listened intently, recording every detail. This new witness could be the missing piece to dismantle the prosecution. She knew the path would be difficult, but this revelation brought new hope. With the signed statement and collected evidence, Marie was more determined than ever to save Thierry. The gleam of hope in her eyes contrasted with the fatigue of sleepless nights as she prepared for the upcoming legal battle. Inside the prison, the environment became even more hostile for Thierry. One day, while heading to the cafeteria, he was surrounded by a group of inmates. "Look who's here, the great Judge Dupont," one of them mocked. Before Thierry could react, he was brutally attacked. The inmates he had put behind bars now took out all their anger and frustration on him. Thierry tried to protect himself, but the blows were relentless. The feeling of helplessness and injustice consumed him. Each punch was not just a physical assault, but a cruel reminder of how he had been betrayed and unjustly punished. The sound of the blows and Thierry's cries of pain echoed through the prison corridors as he clung to the hope that justice could still prevail. In the foster home, Lucas spent his days in deep sadness. Sitting by the window, he watched the children playing outside but had no desire to join them. The nights were the worst. He cried silently, holding an old teddy bear his father had given him. He felt completely abandoned, the pain of being away from his father and the uncertainty about the future consuming him. Lucas frequently looked at his phone, hoping for a call that never came. The few visits from Marie were his only source of comfort, but even then, he couldn't avoid the overwhelming feeling of loneliness. The lack of answers and constant fear made his days endless and painful. He wondered if he would ever again feel the security and love he had lost. Captain Pierre Dubois was in his office, with evidence and reports spread across his desk. The growing sense of doubt kept him from sleeping. Reviewing the documents again, he began to notice significant flaws, testimonies that didn't align, inconsistent bank records, and a timeline that simply didn't make sense. Dubois frowned, feeling guilt gnawed his previous convictions. "So, how did this pass through other departments without raising questions?" he murmured to himself. He knew something was deeply wrong. Determined to correct the mistake, he decided to investigate further, starting to question those he once believed to be trustworthy. The search for the truth became a personal mission, an internal struggle between his duty and the truth. Pauline Martin continued her tireless investigation. During a long and exhausting night, while reviewing a pile of digital files and legally obtained recordings, she found a video that caught her attention. The video showed a meeting between Antoine and his accomplices, but the audio was distorted and the voices inaudible. Although she couldn't understand what was being said, Pauline realized the video indicated a suspicious relationship between Antoine and other influential individuals. Knowing she had an important clue, Pauline immediately contacted Marie to share the discovery. "Marie, you need to see this. It might not be definitive proof, but it certainly raises more doubts about Thierry's guilt," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Marie watched the video several times, analyzing every detail. "This might be enough to get a review hearing," she said determinedly. They both knew the video wasn't conclusive, but it was an important step in exposing the conspiracy. Marie arranged a visit for Lucas to see his father in prison. On the day of the visit, Lucas was nervous but eager to see Thierry. When he finally entered the visiting room and saw his father, he ran to hug him. "Dad, I missed you so much," Lucas said, tears in his eyes. Thierry hugged his son tightly, feeling a wave of relief and love. "I missed you too, son. I missed you too," he replied, his voice choked with emotion. That moment brought emotional relief to both Thierry and Lucas. "We will overcome this together, Lucas." "I promise," Thierry said. The exchange of looks between them spoke more than 1,000 words. Marie Durand, armed with the new evidence provided by Pauline and Dubois' review, managed to schedule a hearing to review Thierry's case. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was filled with journalists and onlookers, all eager to see the outcome. The tension was palpable. Marie, confident and determined, presented the new evidence to the judge. "Your Honor, this evidence clearly shows my client was the victim of a conspiracy. Although the video is not conclusive, it indicates a suspicious relationship between Antoine and other influential individuals. We ask that all charges against him be reconsidered in light of these new discoveries," she argued. The judge, impressed with the solidity of the new evidence and the flaws found by Dubois, agreed to reassess the case. A sense of hope began to permeate the air. During the hearing, Thierry had the opportunity to speak. He stood, took a deep breath, and with a voice choked with emotion, began to speak. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, I was unjustly accused and imprisoned for a crime I did not commit. The pain of being separated from my son and being publicly humiliated is indescribable. But I am here to fight, not just for myself, but for all who have been victims of a corrupt system." He paused, letting his words echo through the courtroom. "But the truth always finds a way. I thank everyone who believed in me and worked tirelessly to bring the truth to light. I ask not just for justice for myself, but for all who have been wronged by a corrupt system." Many in attendance had tears in their eyes. Lucas, sitting next to Marie, looked at his father with renewed admiration. Thierry's speech touched everyone, reminding them of the importance of fighting for truth and justice. The tension in the air was palpable, but there was also a growing sense that the tide was finally turning in Thierry's favor. Captain Pierre Dubois was increasingly convinced of Thierry Dupont's innocence. Sitting in his office, he reviewed the evidence he had collected, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. Dubois knew that by helping Thierry, he was risking his own career, but the pursuit of truth was more important to him. He looked at the documents scattered on the table, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. How did this go unnoticed, he thought, doubt gnawing at his previous convictions. Finally, he decided to act. In secret, Dubois began gathering additional evidence and investigating the individuals involved in the conspiracy. He knew he needed to be discreet, as any misstep could reveal his intentions and compromise his position. The decision to help Thierry was risky, but Dubois was determined to do the right thing. Pauline Martin continued her relentless search for the truth. One afternoon, she met with a reluctant witness, a former employee of Antoine who had crucial information. "You need to understand, this is a chance to correct a great injustice," Pauline said, her voice full of urgency and sincerity. The witness hesitated, fear evident in his eyes. "And I saw Antoine bribing several people to frame Thierry," he finally said, his voice trembling. "But I'm afraid of what he might do if he finds out I talked." "You are not alone," Pauline assured. "We have a team of people who believe in the truth. Together, we can ensure your safety." Convinced by Pauline's passion and determination, the witness agreed to speak publicly, a step that could turn the tide in Thierry's favor. The decision to testify was difficult, but the promise of protection and justice offered tangible relief. After convincing the witness to speak, Pauline found an anonymous letter on her desk. The envelope without a sender bore only her name. Opening it, she found a threatening message. "Stop meddling where you don't belong or you will face the consequences." Pauline felt a chill run down her spine. The threat wouldn't deter her, but it made clear the danger she was facing. With trembling hands, she kept the letter, feeling the pressure mounting. Antoine Leblanc began to realize things were not going as planned. He noticed Julien Lefebvre, his accomplice, was acting strangely. Julien avoided meetings, and his answers became increasingly evasive. Antoine, suspicious, began investigating Julien's loyalty. One night, in a private meeting, Antoine confronted Julien. "Are you hiding something from me?" Antoine asked, his voice cold and threatening. Julien was sweating, feeling the weight of suspicion. "No, Antoine. I'm just worried about how much we are risking," Julien replied, trying to stay calm. However, Antoine was not easily convinced and decided to keep Julien under surveillance. The tension between the two increased, threatening to unravel the conspiracy. Lucas, now with more time alongside his father during prison visits, began to understand the complexity of the situation. During conversations with Thierry, he realized the depth of the injustice his father was facing. "Dad, I know you're innocent, and I want to help," Lucas said firmly. Thierry, moved, patiently explained all the details of the case to Lucas. "The truth will prevail, son, and your strength gives me even more courage to fight," Thierry said, feeling a new vigor seeing Lucas's unconditional support. This understanding and support further strengthened the bond between father and son, fueling Thierry's resilience. Lucas, once confused and scared, now felt a new determination growing within him. Marie Durand, dedicated to proving Thierry's innocence, continued her relentless investigation. One afternoon, while reviewing documents and financial records, she found a crucial clue, a direct link between Antoine and the actual crime Thierry was accused of committing. The record showed a suspicious bank transfer connecting Antoine to one of the main perpetrators of the crime. "This is it," exclaimed Marie, feeling a mix of surprise and relief. With this new evidence, she knew she had an even stronger argument to present in court. The discovery not only strengthened Thierry's case, but also exposed Antoine's true nature. The growing tension indicated the final showdown was approaching. Captain Pierre Dubois, driven by his growing certainty of Thierry's innocence, decided to take more decisive action. One quiet night, he met secretly with Marie Durand in a discreet cafe. With a serious look, Dubois handed her an envelope full of confidential documents. "These are proofs I collected in secret. They show direct connections between Antoine and the real culprits, including Julien Lefebvre," Dubois said, his voice filled with urgency. Marie opened the envelope and saw a series of documents, including bank records and intercepted communications. "This is exactly what we need to strengthen Thierry's defense," Marie replied, her eyes shining with determination. Feeling a wave of hope, she began planning how to use them effectively in court. During a visit to the prison, Marie shared the evidence with Thierry. We have bank records and intercepted communications connecting Antoine and Julien to the real culprits," Marie explained, showing the documents to Thierry. Seeing the evidence, Thierry felt a mix of anger and determination. "So it was Antoine all along and Julien is involved? They will pay for this," he said, clenching his fists. Days before handing the evidence to Marie, Dubois had noticed strange behavior in Julien. During a routine investigation, he saw Julien in a clandestine meeting with Antoine. Observing from a distance, Dubois realized Julien was nervous and avoided direct eye contact with Antoine, suggesting he knew more than he was revealing. This behavior raised suspicions and motivated Dubois to investigate further, leading to the discovery of the evidence. Pauline Martin was preparing an article that would shake the foundations of local society. After weeks of investigation and validation of information, she finally had the necessary material to expose Antoine Leblanc's corruption. Sitting in her office, Pauline typed frantically, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she wrote every detail of her findings. The next morning, her article was published with the title, "Corruption Exposed: The Truth About Antoine Leblanc." In it, Pauline detailed the suspicious transactions, bribes, and manipulations Antoine had conducted to frame Thierry. The article spread quickly, causing an uproar in public opinion and putting Antoine under an unwanted spotlight. Reactions were immediate, with protests and demands for justice growing every hour. Desperate with the new wave of accusations and Pauline's devastating article, Antoine Leblanc decided to act to protect his interests. He began trying to silence witnesses who could testify against him and eliminate any incriminating evidence. Antoine used his contacts to bribe, threaten, and intimidate those who possessed dangerous information. Julien Lefebvre, realizing the increasing tensions, felt more and more insecure. "We need to end this before it's too late," Julien thought, fearing both Antoine and the possibility of being exposed. Antoine, relentless, reinforced his threats to Julien and others involved, heightening the atmosphere of fear and distrust. During prison visits, Lucas began to see the true strength and resilience of his father. Every conversation, every gesture from Thierry showed the unwavering determination of a man fighting for justice. Lucias, who had previously been lost and confused, now saw Thierry as a hero, someone facing adversity with courage and dignity. "Dad, you are a true hero," Lucas said one day, his eyes shining with admiration. Thierry, moved, smiled at his son. "I'm doing this for us, Lucas, and with you by my side, I feel stronger," he replied. This new dynamic brought a deep emotional connection between father and son, fueling the hope that justice would prevail. Determined to expose the truth and turn the tables on Antoine, Thierry began planning a direct confrontation with Julien Lefebvre. During one of Marie's visits, Thierry shared his plan. "Julien is the key. He knows everything and can give us the confession we need," Thierry explained, holding the documents showing Julien's connection to Antoine. Marie, worried but confident in Thierry's determination, agreed to help. "Let's bring him here under the pretext of a plea negotiation," she suggested. Thierry nodded, knowing this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. The tension increased as they planned every detail of the encounter. When Julien was finally brought to the visiting room, he was visibly nervous. Thierry, with a firm voice, began to confront him. "Julien, we have evidence of your connection with Antoine. It's time to tell the truth," Thierry said, looking directly into Julien's eyes. Julien, sweating and visibly shaken, realized he was cornered. The weight of guilt and fear of Antoine's reprisals pressed on him. "If you confess, you might have a chance at redemption," Thierry insisted, the tension in the air almost palpable. Julien knew this was his only chance to escape Antoine's shadow and decided it was time to speak. Antoine Leblanc was growing increasingly paranoid. The news about the investigations and mounting media pressure began to affect him. He hired a private investigator to monitor Thierry and his allies' movements. One night, the investigator brought alarming news. Thierry is planning a direct confrontation with Julien Lefebvre to force him to confess, the investigator reported. Antoine felt a wave of panic. He knew that if Julien confessed, everything would be lost. Determined to sabotage the plan, Antoine began manipulating his influences within the prison. He bribed some guards to ensure Thierry was placed in isolation, making any attempt at communication or action difficult. Meanwhile, Julien Lefebvre was being consumed by guilt. Antoine's constant threats and the pressure of the situation were starting to affect his sanity. Julien spent sleepless nights, reliving his actions and the impact they had on Thierry's life. "How could I do this to him?" Julien thought, as tears of remorse streamed down his face. Gradually, the idea of confessing began to seem the only way to find peace. "Guess if I confess, maybe I can correct some of the wrong I did," Julien thought, trying to muster the courage to do the right thing. He knew that confessing would mean risking his own safety, but the guilt was unbearable. Pauline Martin, determined to uncover the truth, continued her relentless investigation. Her discoveries about Antoine were becoming increasingly dangerous. One night, while returning home, Pauline noticed she was being followed. The tension grew with every step, her heart racing. Suddenly, a car sped towards her. Pauline tried to run but was grazed and fell to the ground, feeling intense pain in her leg. The car quickly fled, leaving her injured and terrified. The police were called, and Pauline was taken to the hospital. While recovering, she knew Antoine was behind the attack. This only proves we're on the right track, she thought, determined to continue despite the fear and pain. Marie Durand, tireless in her quest for the truth, continued reviewing documents and collected evidence. One afternoon, while examining financial records, she found a clue that could change everything. An encrypted email between Antoine and an accomplice detailing the plan to frame Thierry. "This is the proof we need," Marie exclaimed. Feeling a mix of relief and excitement, the evidence was clear and irrefutable. With this new information, Marie knew she could present a strong case in court, exposing the full extent of Antoine's corruption. She immediately contacted Pauline and Dubois, sharing the discovery and preparing for the next step. While all this was happening, Thierry was abruptly removed from his cell and taken to isolation. The small, dark, and cold cell increased the sense of despair and helplessness. Unaware of what was happening outside, Thierry felt more alone than ever. Isolation was part of Antoine's plan to sabotage any attempt by Thierry to communicate with Julien or his allies. Thierry spent his days in silence, trying to maintain his sanity and hope. "They cannot break my will," he thought, despite the growing sense of despair. The courtroom was packed, all eyes on Julien Lefebvre. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, with journalists and onlookers eager to know the case's outcome. Under intense pressure, Julien knew he couldn't delay the truth any longer. He stood up, visibly trembling, and looked directly at the judge. "I can't live with this guilt anymore," Julien began, his voice shaking. "Antoine Leblanc forced me to frame Thierry Dupont. We falsified evidence and bribed witnesses to ensure he was convicted." The room erupted in murmurs and whispers, the shock palpable. The judge called for silence, and Julien continued. "I did it out of fear and greed, but I can't bear the guilt anymore." "Thierry is innocent," Julien's words echoed through the courtroom, and he broke down in tears, completely destroyed by the pressure. As Julien confessed, Antoine Leblanc, who was present in the courtroom, realized his situation was becoming untenable. He discreetly stood up and tried to leave the courtroom unnoticed. However, one of his accomplices, who had been bribed and threatened numerous times, decided it was time to redeem himself. When Antoine was about to leave, his accomplice, a man with a somber and tired look, stood up. "There's more you need to know," he shouted, catching everyone's attention. Antoine stopped, frozen, as the accomplice began revealing even darker secrets. "Antoine not only framed Thierry, but is also involved in influence peddling and money laundering schemes. He threatened my family to force me to cooperate." The revelation shocked the audience even more. Seeing that he had no more escape, Antoine tried to run but was quickly detained by the court security. His desperate attempt to flee only reinforced his guilt in everyone's eyes. With Julien's and Antoine's accomplices' confessions, Thierry's case was quickly reassessed. The judge, now convinced of Thierry's innocence, ordered his immediate release. The community, which had followed the case closely, gathered in front of the courthouse to support Thierry. When Thierry left the courthouse, he was met with applause and cheers. People held up signs and banners with messages of support and justice. Thierry, emotional, looked at the crowd and saw familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who believed in his innocence. "Thank you, all of you," Thierry said, tears in his eyes. "Why, without your support, I wouldn't have made it." He was hailed as a hero by the community, and his determination to fight for justice inspired many. Pauline Martin, who had risked her life to uncover the truth, now had all the pieces needed to tell the complete story. She spent the night working frantically on her article, detailing every aspect of the case, from Antoine's conspiracy to Thierry's fight to prove his innocence. The next morning, the article was published with the title, "The Fall of Antoine Leblanc, The Truth Revealed." The response was overwhelming. Pauline received numerous accolades for her brave and tireless work. Her article not only helped clear Thierry's name, but also exposed the deep-rooted corruption, sparking a movement for reform within the judicial system. Captain Pierre Dubois, who had played a crucial role in turning the case around, knew he had one final task to complete. He called a press conference to publicly apologize to Thierry. Standing before the cameras and microphones, Dubois appeared visibly emotional. "I would like to take this opportunity to publicly apologize to Thierry Dupont," Dubois began, his voice firm but laden with emotion. I made a grave mistake in believing the false evidence presented against him. Thierry is an innocent and courageous man, and I deeply regret the suffering he and his family have endured. Thierry, present at the press conference, approached Dubois and extended his hand. Thank you, Captain. I accept your apology, Thierry said, shaking Dubois' hand. The symbolic gesture concluded Dubois' journey of redemption and marked the beginning of a new phase for Thierry and his community. Now more united and vigilant against injustice, Thierry and Lucas, finally reunited, began rebuilding their lives. The relationship between father and son strengthened during the ordeal, and now, together, they face the future with renewed hope. They moved to a new home, away from the shadows of the past where they could start fresh. "We did it, son," Thierry said, his voice filled with emotion as he hugged Lucas tightly. "Yes, you did. We are stronger now," Lucas replied, with a confident smile and a determined gleam in his eyes. Marie Durand and Pauline Martin received public recognition for their tireless efforts to help Thierry and expose the corruption. In a ceremony at the town hall, both were awarded medals of honor. "You are the true heroines of this story," declared the mayor, applauded by everyone present. Marie and Pauline, emotional, smiled and exchanged a look of mutual understanding, knowing their work had made a real difference. Antoine Leblanc was tried and convicted of his crimes, including falsifying evidence, bribery, and involvement in corruption schemes. The sentence was severe, reflecting the gravity of his actions. "Justice has finally prevailed," the prosecutor said when announcing Antoine's conviction. For Thierry and many others, seeing Antoine behind bars was a powerful symbol that truth can triumph over injustice. The murmurs of approval among the public in the courtroom made it clear the community felt the same. Captain Pierre Dubois, motivated by his experience with Thierry's case, began implementing significant reforms within the police department. He introduced new investigation protocols, ethics and transparency training, and a hotline for reporting corruption. "We cannot allow mistakes like this to happen again," Dubois stated in a press conference. His determination to reform the police system ensured future cases would be handled with greater integrity, and the positive response from the community showed his effort was appreciated. Thierry, now free and with his name cleared, reflected on his journey. He acknowledged the importance of the support he received and decided he could not remain silent in the face of injustice. "This experience showed me we must fight against corruption and protect the innocent," Thierry declared in an interview. With the community by his side, he committed to using his voice and experience to promote justice. His determination was clear, and his words resonated deeply with those who listened. To symbolize his redemption and acceptance by society, Thierry was invited to speak as the keynote speaker at a public event on justice and human rights. Standing on stage before a large audience, Thierry felt a wave of relief and accomplishment. "I am honored to be here today, and I promise to continue fighting for a fairer system for all," he said, receiving a standing ovation. The warmth of the applause and the smiling faces in the crowd reinforced his determination and gave him the certainty he was on the right path.
Her daughter called a stranger, "Daddy." He smiled, knowing he once loved her mother. "Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start." The autumn breeze swept through Central Park, carrying with it the laughter of children and the rustle of golden leaves. Janelle Thomas adjusted her daughter's purple wool hat, smiling as the 4-year-old squealed with delight at the sight of squirrels darting between trees. These Saturday morning outings had become their sacred ritual, a piece of normalcy she'd carefully crafted over the years. "Mommy, can I go play?" Aubrey bounced on her toes, her dark curls peeking out from beneath her hat, eyes bright with anticipation as she pointed toward the playground. "Stay where I can see you, baby," Janelle called after her daughter, who was already racing toward the swings. She found her usual bench, the one with the perfect view of the entire playground, and pulled out her phone to check her work emails. As a pediatric nurse, her weekends were precious, but the hospital never truly left her thoughts. The sounds of children playing created a familiar backdrop as she scrolled through her messages. A young resident needed advice about a difficult case. A colleague was organizing a birthday celebration, and her supervisor wanted to discuss a promotion. 5 years ago, she couldn't have imagined building such a life for herself, not when she'd fled Boston with nothing but a suitcase and a secret growing inside her. A child's cry snapped her attention back to the playground. Her eyes immediately found Aubrey, who had abandoned the swings and was now standing stock still in the middle of the woodchip-covered ground. Janelle's heart skipped a beat as she noticed her daughter's stance. Head tilted slightly, finger pointed ahead, mouth forming words she couldn't quite hear. Rising from the bench, Janelle's nurse's instincts kicked in, scanning for signs of danger or distress. But as she drew closer, the world suddenly tilted on its axis. "Daddy!" The word hung in the air like frost, crystallizing the moment. Janelle's steps faltered as she followed her daughter's pointing finger to a man standing near the climbing frame. He wore a navy peacoat, his dark hair slightly longer than she remembered, but there was no mistaking those warm brown eyes that had once looked at her with such love and now widened with shock as they met hers. Michael Reyes. 5 years dissolved like sugar in rain. The carefully constructed walls around her heart developed hairline cracks as memories flooded in, moonlit walks along the Boston harbor. The way his laugh seemed to start in his eyes before reaching his lips, the gentle stroke of his thumb across her cheek as he told her he loved her, and then the last memory, the devastation in those same eyes when she told him she was leaving, offering no explanation, no real goodbye. "Oh, Janelle," his voice carried the weight of 1,000 unasked questions. Aubrey, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults, tugged at Michael's coat. "You look like the picture in Mommy's box, the one she thinks I don't know about." The color drained from Janelle's face. She'd kept that photo hidden in her keepsake box, buried beneath birthday cards and hospital pay stubs. Sometimes, late at night when sleep eluded her, she'd take it out, their last happy moment together, captured at his sister's wedding. She'd trace the outline of his smile with her finger, wondering if she'd made the right choice. "Aubrey, honey, come here." Janelle's voice trembled slightly as she reached for her daughter's hand. The girl's innocent words had already done their damage. She could see the calculations happening behind Michael's eyes as he looked between them, noting Aubrey's age, her familiar features, the timing of Janelle's disappearance. "How old is she?" The question was quiet, but it carried the force of a thunderclap. Before Janelle could answer, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "Michael, there you are." A woman in elegant riding boots and a camel coat approached, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the wind. She stopped short when she noticed the scene before her, her manicured eyebrows drawing together in confusion. "Rebecca," Michael acknowledged, without taking his eyes off Janelle and Aubrey. I'll catch up with you later." The woman's gaze darted between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Of course," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "Call me later." She squeezed his arm before walking away, her boots clicking against the pathway. Aubrey, sensing the adult's discomfort, pressed closer to Janelle's side. "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" "No, baby." Janelle stroked her daughter's hair, trying to project a calm she didn't feel. "You didn't do anything wrong." But inside, her mind raced. Everything she'd sacrificed, every careful step she'd taken to protect her daughter and Michael from the truth, all of it threatened to unravel because of a chance encounter in a park. "And she's 4, isn't she?" Michael's voice was rough with emotion. That's why you left. You were... He couldn't finish the sentence, but his eyes said everything his words didn't. A gust of wind swept through the park, sending leaves swirling around their feet. Janelle pulled Aubrey closer, as if she could shield her from the storm that was about to break. Michael, I don't. He held up a hand, and she could see it trembling. Well, don't tell me it's not what I think. Don't stand there and lie to me again. The hurt in his voice cut through her like a blade. Is she mine? The question hung between them like a suspended drop of water, ready to fall and create ripples that would change everything. Janelle looked down at her daughter, their daughter, who was watching the exchange with curious eyes that matched her father's exactly. We should talk, Janelle finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, but not here, not in front of her. Michael's jaw clenched, and for a moment Janelle thought he might refuse, but then he nodded, pulling out his phone with hands that weren't quite steady. Your number, he said, give it to me. And Janelle, his eyes met hers, and the mix of pain and determination she saw there made her heart ache. Don't disappear on me again. Not until I know the truth, all of it. As she recited her number, watching him save it with quick, angry movements, Janelle felt the weight of her secrets pressing down on her. How could she explain that she'd left to protect him? That her mother's manipulation and dangerous connections had threatened not just their happiness, but their safety? That sometimes love meant walking away, even when it broke your heart to do so? The answer was simple. She couldn't. Not yet. Not until she was sure that the shadows from her past had truly faded. But as she watched Michael walk away, his shoulders rigid with suppressed emotion, she realized that the time for hiding was over. The truth would come out, one way or another. She just prayed they would all survive it. Michael Reyes stood in his Manhattan apartment, staring at the city lights blurring through the rain-streaked windows. The glass of bourbon in his hand remained untouched, much like the scattered case files on his desk, both silent witnesses to the hours he'd spent lost in thought since leaving the park. 4 years. The numbers haunted him, spinning through his mind like fragments of a broken dream. 4 years of birthdays he'd missed, first words he hadn't heard, steps he hadn't guided. The weight of lost time pressed against his chest until he could barely breathe. His phone buzzed again. The third time Rebecca had tried to reach him. He let it go to voicemail, just as he had with the previous calls. How could he explain to his girlfriend of 8 months that his entire world had shifted on its axis in a single morning? That a little girl with familiar eyes had pointed at him and called him Daddy? The bourbon glass met the kitchen counter with more force than intended, and Michael ran his hands through his hair, disheveling it further. The pristine order of his apartment, all chrome and leather and carefully chosen art pieces, suddenly felt like a mockery. What good was building the perfect life when it was built on incomplete foundations? His phone lit up again, but this time it wasn't Rebecca. The text message preview showed a name he'd deleted years ago but never forgotten. I know you have questions. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Burton's Coffee on West 82nd. I'll tell you everything. Michael's throat tightened. Janelle. Even seeing her name on his screen brought back the scent of her jasmine perfume, the sound of her laugh, the way she used to trace patterns on his arm while they talked about their future. A future that had vanished the morning he woke to find her gone, leaving nothing but a hastily written note. I'm sorry. Please don't look for me. He'd honored that request, though it had nearly broken him. Thrown himself into his work at the law firm, made partner 2 years ahead of schedule, dated sensible women who didn't make his heart race. And now, the buzzer of his apartment rang, startling him from his thoughts. Through the intercom, Rebecca's voice carried a note of concern. Michael, I brought dinner. You seemed upset earlier, and I thought... He pressed his forehead against the cool wall, guilt mixing with the tumult of other emotions churning inside him. Rebecca deserved better than silence, better than a boyfriend whose past had just crashed into his present with the force of a tidal wave. Coming down, he replied, grabbing his keys. He couldn't avoid this conversation, even if he dreaded it. The lobby of his building was quiet, the doorman discreetly busy with his crossword puzzle as Rebecca waited, holding a bag from their favorite Italian restaurant. Her blonde hair was slightly damp from the rain, and her expression softened with relief when she saw him. "You look terrible," she said, but her tone was gentle. "And want to tell me what happened back there?" Michael led her to one of the lobby's sitting areas, away from the doorman's polite pretense of disinterest. The leather chairs creaked as they sat, and the bag of food settled between them like a barrier. "The woman in the park," he began, his voice rougher than he intended. "Janelle, is someone I used to know, someone important." Rebecca's hand stilled on the takeout bag. "The one who left you? You told me about her once, after that charity gala when you'd had too much champagne." He nodded, the memory of that vulnerable moment making him uncomfortable. "That little girl. She's 4 years old, Rebecca. Janelle disappeared 5 years ago. The timing." Understanding dawned in Rebecca's eyes, followed quickly by something else. Disappointment, perhaps, or resignation. "You think she's yours?" "I don't think." "I know." The certainty had been growing in him all day, like a photograph slowly developing. Those eyes, the way she tilts her head. I saw my sister's kids do the same thing at that age. And Janelle, the way she looked at me when her daughter called me Daddy, she didn't deny it. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the pattern on the takeout bag. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. "What are you going to do?" "I'm meeting her tomorrow morning. I need answers." He reached for Rebecca's hand, but she pulled back slightly. "And after you get those answers?" Her eyes met his, searching. "Michael, I've dated enough to recognize a turning point when I see one. That little girl. If she's yours, everything changes." "Rebecca," she stood, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "Keep the food. You probably haven't eaten all day. And Michael," she paused, her composure cracking just slightly, "whatever you discover tomorrow, whatever you decide to do, just remember that you deserve the whole truth. Don't let her half-explain things this time." He watched her walk away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, and felt a fresh wave of guilt. Rebecca deserved better than being collateral damage in this situation. But she was right. Everything had changed the moment Aubrey pointed at him in that park. Back in his apartment, Michael pulled out his phone and opened his photos. In a folder he rarely accessed, buried under years of newer memories, was a picture from his sister's wedding. He and Janelle dancing under string lights, her head thrown back in laughter as he dipped her. They'd been so young, so in love, so certain of their future together. Now, looking at it with new eyes, he noticed something he'd missed before, the way Janelle's hand rested protectively over her stomach, so subtle it could have been unconscious. Had she known then? Was that the moment she decided to leave? His finger hovered over the delete button, but he couldn't do it. Instead, he opened his text messages and typed a reply to Janelle. "I'll be there. And this time, I need the whole truth. No more running." The response came almost immediately. "No more running. I promise." Michael set his phone down and walked to his home office. From the bottom drawer of his desk, he pulled out a small velvet box he'd never been able to throw away. Inside, a vintage sapphire ring caught the light, the ring he'd planned to give Janelle the week she disappeared. He'd kept it as a reminder to guard his heart more carefully. But now it felt like evidence of unfinished business, of questions that needed answers, of a love story that had been interrupted rather than ended. Tomorrow, he would look into Janelle's eyes and demand the truth about their daughter, about her disappearance, about everything she'd kept hidden. But tonight, he would sit with his memories and try to prepare himself for whatever revelations morning might bring. Because one thing was certain. The careful life he'd built in the wake of Janelle's departure was about to shatter like a glass dropped on marble floors, and he had no idea what pattern the pieces would form when they settled. Burton's coffee shop buzzed with its usual morning crowd, but Janelle had arrived early enough to secure a corner table, partially hidden behind a tall potted plant. She wrapped her hands around her untouched cup of chai, using its warmth to steady her trembling fingers. The night had been sleepless, filled with Aubrey's innocent questions about the man from the park and memories that refused to stay buried. Her daughter was safe with her neighbor Mrs. Chen, who had become like a grandmother to Aubrey over the past 3 years. The elderly woman hadn't asked questions when Janelle appeared at her door at dawn, only nodded and promised to keep Aubrey entertained with Chinese paper crafts and homemade dumplings. The bell above the door chimed, and Janelle's heart stuttered. Michael stood in the entrance, scanning the room with the same intensity she remembered from his early days as a law clerk. He'd always had that ability to command attention without trying, but now it was refined, polished by success and time. His charcoal suit spoke of corner offices and partnership meetings, while the shadows under his eyes revealed a sleepless night that matched her own. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither moved. Then Michael walked to her table, each step measured and deliberate. He didn't sit immediately, instead standing over her with his hands in his pockets. "I ordered you coffee," Janelle said softly. "Black, 2 sugars, unless that's changed too." The ghost of something, pain perhaps, or bitter amusement, crossed his face as he finally took the seat across from her. "Some things haven't changed." He wrapped his hands around the cup but didn't drink, though apparently fatherhood did, without my knowledge. Janelle flinched at the controlled anger in his voice. "Michael, No!" He cut her off, his voice low but fierce. "Before you say anything else, I need to know. Is she mine? I deserve that much truth at least." Janelle met his gaze steadily, though it cost her every ounce of strength she possessed. "Yes, Aubrey is your daughter." Michael closed his eyes briefly, his hands tightening around the coffee cup until his knuckles whitened. When he opened them again, they shone with unshed tears. "I've missed 4 years of her life. 4 years, Janelle. Her first steps, her first words, everything. How could you do that to me? To her, I didn't have a choice." The words came out barely above a whisper. "There's always a choice." His voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. He noticed and leaned in closer, continuing more quietly but with no less intensity. "You chose to leave without a word. You chose to hide my child from me. You chose to rob me of the chance to be a father. To protect you both." The words burst from her before she could stop them. "My mother, Loretta," Michael's brow furrowed. "What does she have to do with any of this?" Janelle's hands began to shake again, and she clasped them tightly in her lap. "Everything. She has everything to do with this." She took a deep breath, knowing that once she started speaking, there would be no going back. "Do you remember that case you were working on, right before I left? The one about the charity foundation?" Michael's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "The Winchester Foundation fraud case. That was just a simple financial audit." "No." Janelle's voice cracked. "It wasn't simple at all. My mother, she was involved with them, deeply involved. When she found out you were investigating..." Understanding began to dawn in Michael's eyes. The investigation did uncover something bigger, money laundering, connections to organized crime, but it was all dead ends and sealed records. We could never prove... He trailed off, staring at her. "Janelle, what did your mother do?" She glanced around the coffee shop, suddenly aware of how public their location was. "Not here. There's a small park 2 blocks down." "Please." Michael studied her for a long moment before nodding. They left their barely touched drinks behind, stepping out into the crisp morning air. The walk to the park was silent, heavy with unspoken words and 5 years of separation. The park was empty except for a few joggers who paid them no attention. They found a bench, partially concealed by flowering bushes, and Janelle took another deep breath of the cool air. "My mother called me to her house that night, just after you told me about the audit. She had files, photos, documents, things that would have destroyed your career before it began. She said she could plant evidence, make it look like you were involved in the fraud. She had connections, people who owed her favors." Janelle's voice shook. She said, "If I didn't leave, if I didn't keep you away from the investigation, she would ruin you. Why didn't you tell me?" Michael's voice was hoarse. We could have fought it together. You don't know my mother, not really. Janelle's laugh was bitter. She showed me other photos too, of your sister's house, your parents' restaurant. She made it clear that it wouldn't just be your career. She would destroy your whole family. And then you found out you were pregnant, Michael said softly. Janelle nodded, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. 2 days before I left, I knew then I had to go. I couldn't risk my mother using our child as another piece of leverage. She's capable of things you can't imagine, Michael. Things I've spent years trying to forget. Michael was quiet for a long moment, processing. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, controlled. Where is Loretta now? I don't know. Janelle wrapped her arms around herself. After I left, I cut all ties, changed my phone, my email, everything. I haven't spoken to her since that night, but sometimes I see cars parked outside our apartment building, men I don't recognize watching us. I can never be sure if it's paranoia or if she's found us again. Jesus, Janelle. Michael ran a hand over his face. All these years, I imagined every possible reason you might have left. But this, he turned to face her fully. Why now? Why stay in New York where she could find you? Because running forever isn't living. Janelle met his eyes. Aubrey deserves better than a life spent looking over her shoulder. And yesterday, when she recognized you from that photo, she smiled sadly. Maybe it was fate stepping in, or maybe I was just tired of letting fear control our lives. Michael reached out slowly, hesitantly, and took her hand. His touch sent electricity through her arm, just like it had 5 years ago. Tell me everything, he said quietly. Every detail, every suspicion, everything you know about your mother's involvement. I'm not that powerless law clerk anymore, Janelle. I have resources now, connections of my own. Michael, no. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held firm. You don't understand how dangerous. What I understand, he interrupted, is that I have a daughter who called me daddy before she even knew who I was. I understand that the woman I loved, still love, God help me, has been carrying this burden alone for 5 years, and I understand that it's time for that to end. A jogger passed their bench, and Janelle used the moment to collect herself. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. If I tell you everything, there's no going back. My mother, she'll know, and this time she'll come after all of us. Michael's hand tightened around hers. Then we'll be ready for her, together. Looking into his eyes, Janelle saw the same determination that had first drawn her to him in law school, but now it was tempered by experience, by pain, by years of building himself into someone stronger. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to stop running. She squeezed his hand back and began to talk. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across Michael's office as he stared at the screen before him. Files from the Winchester Foundation case filled his dual monitors. Financial records, witness statements, and court documents he hadn't looked at in years. But now, with Janelle's revelations echoing in his mind, familiar details took on sinister new meanings. A knock at his door interrupted his concentration. "Now come in," he called, minimizing the windows with practiced speed. David Chen, his longtime friend and the firm's top investigator, stepped inside and closed the door. "Got your message?" Sounded urgent. He paused, taking in Michael's appearance. "You look like hell. I need a favor." Michael gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Off the books." David's eyebrows rose as he sat down. Those are expensive words, my friend. I need everything you can find on Loretta Williams. Focus on the last 5 years, but go back as far as you need to." Michael pushed a notepad across the desk. "These are the details I have. And David, this needs to stay between us." His friend studied the notes, his expression growing more serious with each line. "This has something to do with Janelle, doesn't it? The one who disappeared?" Michael nodded, then added quietly, "And my daughter." David's head snapped up. "Your what?" "It's a long story." Michael ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Can you help?" "You know I can." David pocketed the notepad. But Michael, if half of what you've written here is true, we're talking about serious criminal connections. Are you sure you want to pull this thread? Before Michael could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from Janelle. Aubrey keeps asking about you. Would you like to meet her? Properly this time. His heart jumped into his throat. David, noticing his friend's expression, stood up. Whatever this is, be careful. I'll start digging tonight. After David left, Michael stared at the message for a long moment before replying, Yes, please. The response came quickly. Central Park Zoo, tomorrow at 10. It's her favorite place. As Michael confirmed the meeting, another text arrived, this one from Rebecca. I'm coming by to pick up some things I left at your place. Hope that's okay. Reality crashed back in Rebecca. In the whirlwind of the past 2 days, he'd almost forgotten about their unfinished conversation in the lobby. She deserved better than text messages and avoidance. An hour later, Rebecca stood in his living room, collecting a few items from the drawer he'd cleared for her months ago. The silence between them was heavy with words unsaid. I've been thinking, she finally spoke, folding a cashmere sweater with precise movements. About what you said in the lobby, about your daughter. Michael leaned against the wall, watching her. I'm meeting her tomorrow. Properly, I mean. Rebecca's hands stilled on the sweater. You deserve that chance. To be a father. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. But I need you to understand something, Michael. I can't be part of this story. Not now. Rebecca, please, let me finish. She took a deep breath. I've watched you build walls around yourself for 8 months. Every time I got close to them, you'd change the subject, or work late, or find some other way to keep your distance. Now I know why. She smiled sadly. Those walls weren't meant to keep me out. They were meant to keep her in. Michael wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in his throat, because underneath the shock and anger of Janelle's revelations, there was something else, a feeling of completeness, as if a missing piece had finally clicked into place. You're going to fight for them, Rebecca continued. It wasn't a question. Whatever made her leave, whatever she's afraid of, you're already planning how to fix it. That's who you are, and they deserve that version of you, the one who fights, who cares, who doesn't hold back. She placed the folded sweater in her bag. I deserve that too, just with someone else. She crossed the room and kissed his cheek softly. Be happy, Michael, and be careful. After she left, Michael returned to his office, but his mind wasn't on work anymore. Instead, he found himself searching through old photos on his phone until he found one from his niece's birthday party last year. He'd been teaching her to play basketball, showing her how to dribble despite her small hands. Would Aubrey like basketball? What was her favorite color? Did she love stories before bed like he had as a child? 4 years of questions crowded his mind, along with a desperate desire to know every detail to make up for lost time. His phone buzzed again, another text from Janelle. This time it was a photo, Aubrey at what looked like a recent birthday party. Her face lit up with joy as she reached for a cake decorated with dancing penguins. The caption read, Thought you might want this. It's from her 4th birthday last month. Michael's vision blurred as he studied the image. She had his mother's smile, his sister's curls. How had he not seen it immediately in the park? How had he ever thought he could walk away after that first meeting? He saved the photo and then, after a moment's hesitation, sent one back, the picture of him teaching his niece basketball. Think she might want to learn someday. Janelle's response made his heart twist. She already loves basketball. Funny how some things are in the blood. A notification popped up on his computer. David had already started sending preliminary findings about Loretta Williams. The files were encrypted, marked urgent. Michael's jaw tightened as he began to read. The deeper he dug into Loretta's world, the more certain he became that Janelle's fears weren't paranoia, but that was tomorrow's battle. Tonight, he had 4 years of his daughter's life to learn about, and a trust to rebuild with the woman he'd never truly stopped loving. He closed the files and typed another message to Janelle. Tell me everything about her. Start from the beginning. As the city lights began to twinkle outside his window, Michael settled in to read Janelle's responses, each message filling in another piece of the puzzle that was his daughter's life. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, meeting Aubrey properly, navigating this new reality, and facing whatever dangers Loretta's shadow held. But for now, he let himself imagine teaching Aubrey to dribble a basketball, hearing her call him Daddy again, this time with full understanding of what that word meant. And somehow, despite the complications and the lurking dangers, he knew that everything in his life had been leading to this moment. His daughter was waiting to meet him. Everything else could wait. The Central Park Zoo hummed with weekend activity as Janelle adjusted Aubrey's rainbow-striped beanie. Her daughter bounced on her toes, practically vibrating with excitement as they waited by the sea lion pool. Everything about this moment felt surreal. The crisp October morning, the chorus of animal sounds, the knowledge that in minutes Aubrey would properly meet her father. "Mommy, is the man from the park really coming?" Aubrey asked for the third time, clutching her stuffed penguin, a constant companion since her last birthday. "Yes, baby." Janelle smoothed her daughter's coat. "His name is Michael, remember, and he's very excited to meet you." "Is he the one from your special box? The one who makes you cry sometimes?" Janelle's hands stilled. She'd never realized Aubrey had seen her during those late-night moments of weakness. Before she could respond, a familiar voice called out behind them, "Good morning." They turned to find Michael approaching, looking both professional and approachable in dark jeans and a camel-colored sweater. In his hands, he carried a gift bag decorated with cartoon penguins. Aubrey's grip on her stuffed penguin tightened as she pressed against Janelle's leg, suddenly shy. Michael knelt down to her eye level, maintaining a careful distance. "Hi, Aubrey. Your mum tells me you love penguins." He smiled, warm and gentle. "I brought you something, if that's okay." Aubrey looked up at Janelle, who nodded encouragingly. Slowly, the little girl stepped forward and accepted the bag. Inside was a plush emperor penguin, wearing a tiny backpack. "His backpack opens," Michael explained softly. "I thought maybe you could keep special treasures in there." Aubrey's face lit up as she discovered the hidden compartment. "Look, Mommy. He can carry things like my school bag." "What do we say?" Janelle prompted, her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you." Aubrey hugged the new penguin alongside her old one, her earlier shyness melting away. "Do you want to see the real penguins with us? They're my favorite." Michael's eyes met Janelle's over their daughter's head, both of them fighting back tears. "I'd love that," he managed. As they walked to the penguin exhibit, Aubrey's natural exuberance returned. She skipped ahead, chattering about her knowledge of different penguin species. Michael absorbed every word, asking questions that made her beam with pride in her expertise. "Did you know emperor penguins are the biggest?" Aubrey pressed her face against the viewing glass. "Mrs. Chen helped me read a whole book about them." "Mrs. Chen?" Michael glanced at Janelle. "Our neighbor. She watches Aubrey sometimes when I have night shifts at the hospital." Janelle's voice dropped. "She's been a godsend, especially since—" She trailed off, but Michael caught her subtle scan of their surroundings. He stepped closer, pitching his voice low. "David started digging. We should talk later." Janelle nodded tightly, then forced a smile as Aubrey called them over to watch a penguin diving for fish. The morning unfolded like a dream. They visited the snow leopards, where Aubrey demonstrated her impressive roar. At the red pandas, she shared her theory that they were actually foxes wearing raccoon suits, making Michael laugh so hard he had to wipe his eyes. Each moment felt precious, weighted with 4 years of absence. Near the children's zoo, Aubrey spotted an ice cream cart. As she and Michael waited in line, him lifting her up so she could study the flavor options, Janelle's phone buzzed. The number was blocked. "Hello." Her voice was steady, even as her hands began to shake. "Such a lovely family outing." Her mother's voice, smooth as honey and twice as dangerous, slid through the speaker. "The zoo was always your favorite place as a child, wasn't it, darling?" Janelle's blood ran cold. "How did you—" "That new penguin looks charming. Though I must say, Michael's taste in gifts has improved since law school. Janelle spun around, scanning the crowds. There, by the seabird sanctuary, a man in a dark jacket speaking into a phone. He smiled and waved when he caught her eye. "What do you want?" Janelle's fingers gripped the phone so hard they ached. "Can't a grandmother check in on her family?" Loretta's laugh was musical, poisonous. "Though I must admit, I'm disappointed. After all the trouble I went to, keeping you both safe, and now you've dragged poor Michael right back into danger. Keep away from them." Janelle's voice shook with fury. "I swear to God, Mother, if you... Now, is that any way to speak to family? We should catch up properly. Dinner, perhaps? Just us girls." Loretta's tone hardened. "Tonight, 7 o'clock. The usual place. Come alone, or I might have to arrange a more public reunion." The line went dead. When Janelle looked back at the seabird sanctuary, the man was gone. "Mommy, I got strawberry." Aubrey's voice cut through her panic. She turned to find her daughter holding an ice cream cone, pink already smeared around her smiling mouth. Michael stood behind her, his own smile fading as he read Janelle's expression. "Baby, why don't you show Michael how the prairie dogs pop up?" Janelle suggested, fighting to keep her voice normal. "I'll be right there." Once Aubrey was absorbed in the prairie dog exhibit, Michael gripped Janelle's elbow. "What happened?" "She's watching us." Janelle's whisper was barely audible. "My mother, she wants to meet tonight." Michael's face hardened. "I'm coming with you." "No." Janelle grabbed his arm. "She said alone. And Michael..." "She had someone following us, taking pictures. If I don't go, then we'll get proof." His jaw set with determination. "Document everything. Build a case. Janelle, you don't have to face her alone anymore." A squeal of delight drew their attention back to Aubrey, who was giggling as a prairie dog popped up right in front of her. The sight of her joy, so pure and untouched by the darkness swirling around them, made Janelle's decision crystallize. "Tonight," she said finally. "I'll meet her tonight, but Michael..." She met his eyes, letting him see her fear and her resolve. "If anything happens to me, promise you'll keep Aubrey safe. Promise you'll never let my mother near her. Nothing's going to happen to you." He caught her hand, squeezing it fiercely. "We're in this together now. All of us." As if to emphasize his point, Aubrey ran back to them, grabbing both their hands to pull them toward the next exhibit. The weight of her small fingers intertwined with theirs felt like both a blessing and a responsibility, one that neither of them would ever take lightly again. But as they followed their daughter through the zoo, Janelle couldn't shake the chill of her mother's words. The game she'd been playing for 5 years was changing, and she knew better than anyone that Loretta Williams never made empty threats. Tonight would change everything. She just prayed she was strong enough to protect the ones she loved, no matter what the cost. La Maison d'Or hadn't changed in 5 years. The same heavy velvet drapes framed the windows. The same crystal chandeliers cast their warm glow over white tablecloths. And the same maître d' raised his eyebrows in recognition as Janelle approached. "Ms. Williams," he said, using her maiden name with pointed precision. "Your mother awaits you in the private dining room." Of course she did. The private dining room had always been Loretta's preferred setting for her most devastating performances. Janelle smoothed her black dress, chosen carefully to project strength she didn't feel, and followed the maitre d' through the restaurant. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A text from Michael. "David's outside. Signal if you need us. Stay safe." She deleted the message immediately. Her mother had eyes everywhere. The private dining room door opened, and there she was. Loretta Williams sat like a queen holding court, elegant in cream-colored silk that emphasized her dark skin and ageless beauty. A half-empty glass of red wine sat before her, and her signature pearl necklace caught the light as she turned. "Darling." Loretta's smile was a perfect curve of painted coral. "You look thin. Has motherhood been so taxing?" Janelle took her seat, declining the wine the server offered. "What do you want, Mother?" "Such hostility." Loretta sipped her wine. "Can't a mother miss her daughter, her granddaughter?" Her eyes sharpened. Though I must say, Aubrey has grown into quite the charming child. Those curls, pure Thomas family genetics. Janelle's hands clenched under the table. Stay away from her. Or what? Loretta's voice remained pleasant, but her eyes hardened. You'll run again. Honestly, darling, I expected better from you. New York? Really? Practically in my backyard. I'm done running. Yes, I noticed. Loretta set down her wineglass with precise movements. That little scene at the zoo was quite touching. Michael always did have a way with children. Such a shame he's gotten himself involved in things that don't concern him. Again, the server appeared with their appetizers. Beef carpaccio for Loretta, untouched soup for Janelle. When they were alone again, Loretta's mask slipped slightly. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. The arrangements I made, the promises I kept, all to keep him safe, to keep you both safe, and you throw it away for what? Some fairy tale of playing happy families? Arrangements. Janelle leaned forward. You threatened to destroy his career, his family. I protected him. Loretta's composure cracked. And that Winchester Foundation case. He was digging into things that would have gotten him killed. Real killers. Janelle, not the corporate criminals he thinks he deals with. When I discovered he was getting close, she took a deep breath, straightening her pearls. Well, a ruined career is better than a closed casket. The soup churned in Janelle's stomach. You're lying. Am I? Loretta reached into her purse and withdrew a thick envelope. These photos were taken 2 days before you left. That's Michael, leaving his office. And that man following him. He works for people who don't send warning messages. They send flowers to funerals. Janelle's hands shook as she looked at the photos. Michael, younger and unaware, being stalked by a man whose cold eyes seemed to stare through the paper. I made a deal, Loretta continued, her voice softening. Your departure for his life. Simple, clean. Everyone walked away breathing. She took back the photos. But now you've complicated things. They've noticed him looking into old files, asking questions. Who are they? Better you don't know. Loretta dabbed her lips with her napkin. What matters is this. You have 24 hours to end it. Whatever rekindled romance you're playing at, whatever co-parenting dreams you're entertaining, end them. Take Aubrey and leave the city. I'll make arrangements, set you up somewhere new, somewhere safe, or I won't be able to protect any of you. Loretta's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Janelle saw something like fear in them. They're not as amenable to deals as they were 5 years ago, and this time they'll make sure there's nothing left to rebuild. Janelle's phone buzzed again. A photo from Mrs. Chen, Aubrey in her pajamas, reading a story with Michael. They'd arranged it so he could spend the evening with their daughter, a small piece of normalcy in this nightmare. In the photo, they wore matching expressions of concentration as they studied the book. They're beautiful together, aren't they? Loretta's voice made her jump. Her mother had moved to stand behind her, looking at the phone screen. She has his smile. I noticed that in the surveillance photos. Don't. 24 hours, Janelle. Loretta's hand squeezed her shoulder, her pearl bracelet cold against Janelle's skin. For their sakes, if not your own, don't make me do something we'll both regret. She gathered her things, elegant handbag, silk wrap, the envelope of damning photos, and paused at the door. The trust fund I set up for Aubrey, it's still active, more than enough for a fresh start. Think about her future, darling. What matters more, a father she barely knows, or a life without fear? After her mother left, Janelle sat alone in the private dining room, both meals untouched. Her phone buzzed one final time. Michael again. Aubrey's asking for you, says she can't sleep without your special goodnight kiss. Come home to us. Home. Such a simple word for such a complicated truth. Outside the restaurant, David Chen watched Loretta Williams step into a black town car. He noted the plate number, the driver's face, every detail his years as an investigator had taught him to observe. His own phone buzzed with an incoming call. Tell me you got it. Michael's voice was tense, every word. David patted the surveillance equipment hidden in his jacket. The whole conversation, crystal clear, plus photos of everyone who came and went. But Michael, he hesitated. Some of what she said, about the foundation, about the people behind it, it matches things I've been finding. This goes deeper than we thought. Keep digging. And David, get me everything you can on that trust fund she mentioned. If she set it up 5 years ago, it might lead us to the people she's working with, or working for. David watched the town car's taillights disappear into traffic. What about Janelle? What's she going to do? In the background, he could hear Aubrey's voice asking for another story. She'll do what she's always done, Michael said quietly. Try to protect everyone, but this time, she's not alone. None of them are. The call ended, leaving David alone in the gathering darkness. Above him, the restaurant's golden light spilled out like a web of artificial stars, beautiful and treacherous. Somewhere in the city, dangerous men were watching his friend's family, while a grandmother played chess with her daughter's life. 24 hours. The clock was ticking. The digital clock on Michael's office wall clicked to 3:47 a.m., its red numbers casting a faint glow over the scattered papers and empty coffee cups littering his desk. In the conference room next door, David Chen's voice carried through the wall as he coordinated with his network of contacts, each call adding another piece to the puzzle of the Winchester Foundation. Janelle sat curled in Michael's office chair, her dinner dress exchanged for borrowed sweatpants and one of his old Harvard Law sweatshirts. Her eyes were fixed on the laptop screen before her, scanning through years of financial records David had uncovered. "Look at this," she said, turning the laptop toward Michael, who was pacing by the window. "These transfers from the trust fund, they all route through the same bank in the Cayman Islands." Michael leaned over her shoulder, his cologne familiar and comforting despite the tension thrumming through both of them. The same bank that handled Winchester's offshore accounts. "My mother doesn't make mistakes like that." Janelle rubbed her tired eyes. "She wanted us to find this connection. Question is why?" Michael straightened, his reflection in the window overlaying the city lights beyond. "Everything your mother does has layers. Even her threats aren't just threats." The door opened and David entered, his tie long discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up. "You need to hear this." He placed his phone on the desk, activating the speaker. "Go ahead, Carmen. I pulled those hospital records you asked for." A woman's voice crackled through the speaker. "Loretta Williams was admitted to Mount Sinai 3 times in the past year. Nothing major, mild chest pain, exhaustion. But here's the interesting part. Each admission coincided with a major staff change at the Winchester Foundation." "She's monitoring them," Michael said. The stress is affecting her health. Or she wants it to look that way," Janelle countered. "My mother once faked appendicitis to avoid a hostile takeover at her company. She called it strategic illness." David's phone buzzed with an incoming text. His expression darkened as he read it. "My guy at the SEC just confirmed. The Foundation's preparing for a major move. They're liquidating assets, transferring funds. Something big is coming." "How long?" Michael demanded. "Days, maybe less." Janelle stood abruptly, hugging herself. "This isn't just about us, is it? The 24-hour deadline, the breadcrumb trail of evidence, she's trying to tell us something." "But what?" Michael's phone chimed with a text. "Mrs. Chen says Aubrey's still sleeping peacefully." His voice softened. "We should get some rest, too." "We can't protect her if we're exhausted. I can't leave her alone. I've got 2 guys watching the apartment," David interrupted. "Best in the business. Nothing's getting near that building without us knowing." Janelle's protest was cut short by another voice from David's phone, a different contact. "Found something on that trust fund structure. It's set up with an interesting trigger clause. If anything happens to Loretta Williams, all assets transfer immediately to offshore accounts." "A dead man's switch," Michael breathed. "She's not just protecting herself, she's protecting us," Janelle finished, "from whoever's really pulling the strings." She turned to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. "All these years, I thought she was the spider at the center of the web, but she's just another fly, isn't she? Caught like the rest of us! Michael moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. We have 17 hours until her deadline. What do you want to do? Janelle watched their reflections in the glass, remembering another night 5 years ago when she'd made a choice that broke both their hearts. We fight back, but this time, we do it together. David's phone buzzed again. My guy outside the restaurant just spotted Loretta. She's meeting someone at Dovetail. At 4 in the morning. Michael checked his watch. Private meeting, kitchen entrance. David was already grabbing his coat. Want me to follow? No. Janelle turned from the window, her expression determined. I'm going. She's my mother. I'll know if she's sending another message. Not alone, Michael said firmly. The clock's ticking, David reminded them. And if the Foundation's making moves, then we need to move faster. Janelle grabbed her purse. David, keep digging into those hospital records. The timing's too perfect. She must have known about the Foundation's plans in advance. What about Aubrey? Michael asked softly. Mrs. Chen will call if she wakes up. Right now. Janelle met his eyes. Right now. We need to make sure she has a future where she doesn't have to look over her shoulder. They took Michael's car, riding in tense silence through the pre-dawn streets. As they approached Dovetail, Janelle spotted her mother's town car idling in the alley beside the restaurant. Park here, she instructed. Close enough to see, far enough not to be noticed. They watched as a figure emerged from the kitchen entrance, not Loretta, but a man in an expensive suit, his silver hair distinctive even in the dim light. That's Adrian Winchester, Michael whispered. The Foundation's CEO. I interviewed him during the original investigation. Loretta emerged next, her cream silk replaced by a simple black pantsuit. Even from a distance, her body language was clear, tension in every line. Winchester handed her something, a manila envelope. As she reached for it, the streetlight caught her face, and Janelle gasped. What? Michael asked. She's afraid, Janelle said softly. I've never seen her afraid before. They watched as Winchester got into a waiting car, leaving Loretta alone in the alley. She stood there for a long moment, then did something completely out of character. She slumped against the wall, one hand pressing against her chest. The hospital visits, Janelle murmured. They weren't fake. Before Michael could respond, Loretta straightened, composing herself with visible effort. She opened the envelope, read something inside, then did something else unprecedented. She took out her phone and photographed the contents. Insurance, Michael said. Your evidence. Loretta returned to her car, which pulled away smoothly, but as it passed their position, Janelle could have sworn her mother looked directly at them, her expression unreadable in the darkness. Follow her, Michael asked, hand on the ignition. No! Janelle's mind was racing. She knew we'd come. The photos, the meeting location. It was staged for us. She's telling us where to look. The Foundation's records. Deeper than that. Janelle pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos until she found what she was looking for. A picture from her childhood. She and her mother at a charity gala, Loretta wearing that same pearl necklace she never took off. The pearls. She always said they were her insurance policy, but I never understood what she meant. Michael studied the photo. They look real. They are. Family heirlooms. Janelle zoomed in on the image. But my mother doesn't believe in sentiment. Everything she keeps has a purpose. You think the pearls are more than pearls? Janelle met his eyes. Only one way to find out. But first, she took a deep breath. We need to get Aubrey somewhere safe. Really safe. Michael nodded slowly. I have an idea. But you're not going to like it. The sun was beginning to lighten the eastern sky, painting the city in shades of grey and gold. Somewhere in that awakening metropolis, a little girl slept peacefully, unaware that her parents were racing against time to unravel a conspiracy that had separated them for 5 years. They had 16 hours left to solve the puzzle, find the evidence, and figure out how to protect everyone they loved. And somewhere in the city, Loretta Williams clutched a manila envelope. and hoped her daughter was clever enough to understand the breadcrumbs she'd spent 5 years laying out, waiting for exactly this moment. The game was changing. The real question was, who was actually playing it? "No!" Janelle's voice echoed through Michael's kitchen as the morning sun streamed through the windows. "Absolutely not. We are not involving your parents in this." Michael continued, packing Aubrey's favorite cereal into a bag, his movements deliberate. "My father's restaurant is 3 hours upstate. Off the grid, cash only, no credit card trails. Mom and Dad live in the apartment above it. There's no safer place for Aubrey right now. That's exactly why we can't..." "Can't what?" He turned to face her. "Can't trust the people who raised me, who taught me about family and protection and doing whatever it takes for the ones you love." Aubrey's sleepy voice interrupted their tension. "Mommy, why are we at Michael's house?" They both turned to find their daughter in the kitchen doorway, still in her penguin pajamas, clutching both her stuffed penguins, the old one and Michael's gift. Mrs. Chen stood behind her, carrying Aubrey's overnight bag. "Good morning, sweetheart." Janelle forced brightness into her voice. "How would you like to go on a special adventure?" Aubrey's eyes lit up. "What kind of adventure?" Michael knelt down to her level. "Well, I was thinking you might like to meet your grandparents, my mom and dad. They have a restaurant with the best chocolate chip pancakes in the whole world. Better than Mrs. Chen's pancakes." Aubrey looked skeptical. Mrs. Chen laughed softly. "Much better, little one, and I hear they have a secret recipe." "Is it far?" Aubrey asked, moving to examine the bags Michael was packing. "A few hours," he said carefully. "But I thought maybe you and Mrs. Chen could ride up with my sister Anna. She's dying to meet you, and she has 2 kids about your age." Janelle's protest died in her throat as she watched Aubrey's face brighten at the mention of potential playmates. Their daughter had always been lonely, a side effect of constantly moving, constantly watching over their shoulders. "What about you and Mommy?" Aubrey's question carried a hint of anxiety. "We have to take care of some grown-up business," Janelle said softly. "But we'll come get you very soon, I promise." Mrs. Chen touched Janelle's arm. "Anna is downstairs. David's people checked her car and the route. Everything is secure." The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Aubrey, excited by the prospect of an adventure, barely protested when they hustled her into Anna's SUV. Michael's sister, a warm-eyed woman with his same determined jaw, hugged them both fiercely. "Mom and Dad are ready," she whispered. "They've already closed the restaurant for a private event. No one will know she's there." "Anna," Michael's voice was rough. "Thank you. Hey, I finally get to be an aunt." She smiled, but her eyes were serious. "Fix this, whatever it is. Make it safe for her to know her family." They watched the SUV pull away, Aubrey waving excitedly from between her penguins. When it turned the corner, Janelle let out a shaky breath. "She'll be safe there," Michael said quietly. "Dad's got half the town on his payroll, locals who've known our family for generations. If anyone strange shows up asking questions..." "Your father's restaurant," Janelle turned to him suddenly. "It's cash only, off the grid. That's why you really chose it, isn't it? Not just for safety." Michael nodded. "If we need to disappear, all of us, Dad can help. He knows people who know people. But first..." He checked his watch. "We have 12 hours to solve this." David's waiting at the office with what he found about the pearls. The drive to Michael's office was tense, both of them raw from watching their daughter drive away. But when they arrived, David's expression told them it had been worth it. "The pearls aren't just pearls," he said without preamble, spreading photos across the conference table. "Look at these X-rays from Loretta's last hospital visit." Janelle leaned in. "The necklace. There's something inside each pearl." "Micro SD cards," David confirmed. "Probably containing every piece of evidence she's gathered over the past 5 years. The perfect hiding place. She wears them constantly, keeps them close. That's why she staged that show at Dovetail," Michael said. "She wanted us to figure this out." "But why not just give us the evidence?" Janelle asked. "Because she's being watched too closely now." David pulled up an email on his laptop. "That SEC contact. The foundation's not just moving money. They're completely restructuring. Adrian Winchester is stepping down next week, handing control to his son. The son, Janelle breathed. That's what changed. That's why the deals aren't holding anymore. Michael was already pulling up files on his computer. Roman Winchester, 32 years old, Harvard Business School. No criminal record, but he turned the screen to show them a photo. Look who he's dating. Janelle felt the blood drain from her face. The society page photo showed Roman Winchester at a charity gala, his arm around a laughing woman. Rebecca. You're Rebecca, Janelle asked softly. She never wanted those walls to come down, Michael said grimly, because she was gathering information too. David's phone buzzed. He read the message and swore softly. Winchester's people are moving. They figured out Aubrey's gone. Then we move faster. Janelle straightened, her fear hardening into determination. We need those pearls. Your mother won't just hand them over, Michael warned. No. Janelle's smile was sharp, but I know where she keeps them at night, in a safe in her bathroom, behind her favorite Monet. You'll never get in, David protested. Her security won't stop me. Janelle met Michael's eyes. Because I still have a key, and because every night at exactly 8:45 she takes a bath. It's been her routine for 30 years. That gives us, Michael checked his watch, 10 hours to plan, to get everything in place. 9 hours, Janelle corrected, because when we get those pearls, we need time to get the evidence to someone who can use it. Someone whose career can't be destroyed by Winchester's people. Understanding dawned in Michael's eyes. The Attorney General, my old professor from law school. She's been after the Foundation for years. She just never had enough proof. Then what are we waiting for? David was already reaching for his phone. I'll get my people in position. As they began to plan, Janelle's phone buzzed with a text from Anna. A photo of Aubrey and Michael's parents' restaurant kitchen, wearing a tiny apron, helping his father make chocolate chip pancakes. Her smile was radiant. The sight strengthened Janelle's resolve. They had 9 hours to break into her mother's house, steal a necklace full of evidence, and bring down one of the most powerful foundations in New York. 9 hours to ensure their daughter could smile like that every day, without fear or shadows. 9 hours to finish what Loretta had started 5 years ago, when she chose to protect them all in the only way she knew how. The clock was ticking. The hum of David's surveillance van filled the silence as Janelle checked her watch for the 100th time, 8:40 p.m. Through the van's tinted windows, her childhood home loomed against the darkening sky, its Georgian columns and manicured hedges a monument to old money and carefully guarded secrets. Security feed is looped. David's voice crackled through her earpiece. You've got 30 minutes before the system resets. Michael's hand found hers in the darkness. You don't have to do this. We could find another way. No. Janelle squeezed his fingers once before letting go. We couldn't. She stepped out of the van, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. The black cocktail dress she wore was exactly the kind of outfit her mother would approve of. Classic, expensive, perfect for hiding in plain sight. The key she'd kept for 5 years felt heavy in her clutch. Guards are changing shifts, David murmured in her ear. Now. Janelle walked up the familiar path, her muscle memory guiding her to the service entrance her mother always used when returning late. The key slid home silently, and then she was inside, surrounded by the scent of lemon polish and old wood. Somewhere above, she could hear water running, her mother's nightly bath, right on schedule. Janelle moved through the darkness, avoiding the creaky floorboard near the pantry, the squeaky hinge on the kitchen door. The house's familiar patterns felt like a map written in her bones. 5 heat signatures, David reported. 3 guards on the ground floor, 1 in the security office upstairs, and your mother in the master suite. Janelle climbed the back stairs, her heart thundering so loudly she was sure someone would hear it. At the top, she pressed herself against the wall as footsteps approached, then passed, the guard doing his rounds, right on schedule. The master suite door was unlocked. Of course it was. Loretta Williams had never believed in locking herself in, only others out. Steam billowed from the bathroom, and Janelle could hear her mother humming softly. An old lullaby she used to sing when Janelle was small. Moving silently, she approached the Monet that concealed the wall safe. Your mother's phone just lit up. David's voice was tense. She's getting a call. The humming stopped. Janelle froze as her mother's voice carried through the bathroom door. Roman, what an unexpected pleasure. Janelle's blood ran cold. Through her earpiece, she could hear David swearing softly. Of course I understand the urgency. Loretta's voice continued, smooth as silk. But surely this could wait until... I see. No, that won't be necessary. I'll meet you there in an hour. The bath water began to drain. Janelle! Michael's voice was urgent in her ear. Get out, now! But her fingers were already working the combination she'd memorized years ago. Her birthday, her father's death date, the year Loretta had started her first company. The safe door swung open silently. The bathroom door clicked. I was wondering when you'd come for them. Janelle turned slowly. Loretta stood in the doorway wrapped in a silk robe, her wet hair sleek against her head, the pearl necklace gleaming at her throat. She hadn't even bothered to put it in the safe. Mother, did you really think I wouldn't know? Loretta moved to her vanity, began applying cream to her face with practiced movements. The key you kept, the way you've been watching the house. I taught you everything you know about surveillance, darling. Through her earpiece, David was coordinating an extraction team. But before Janelle could move, her mother spoke again. Roman Winchester is on his way here. Now, with his father. Loretta's eyes met Janelle's in the mirror. They know about Aubrey. The world tilted sideways. How? Because I told them. Loretta's hands stilled on her face cream. Because I had to make them believe I was still loyal, still useful, still willing to sacrifice my own daughter and granddaughter to protect their secrets. She turned, and for the first time, Janelle saw past her mother's perfect mask to the exhaustion beneath. The pictures from the zoo, you staged those. Of course I did, just like I staged the meeting at Dovetail, just like I've staged everything for the past 5 years, building a trail of evidence so perfect that even the great Michael Reyes couldn't ignore it. Loretta's smile was bitter. Did you really think I'd keep evidence in a safe you knew about? In pearls I wear every day. Then where? The real evidence is already with the Attorney General. Loretta moved to her closet, began pulling out clothes with swift efficiency. I sent it this morning, after I confirmed you'd moved Aubrey to safety. Quite clever, using Robert's restaurant. Winchester's people would never think to look in a cash-only business 3 hours upstate. Janelle's mind raced to catch up. You knew. You've known everything. I'm your mother. Loretta's voice softened slightly. I've been 3 steps ahead of you since the day you were born. She pressed a phone into Janelle's hands, a burner, already programmed. The Winchesters will be here in 20 minutes. You need to be gone in 10. Come with us. No. Loretta fixed her hair, added lipstick with practiced precision. Someone needs to play the grieving grandmother when they discover you've slipped away again. Someone needs to maintain their trust while the Attorney General builds her case. They'll kill you. Perhaps. Loretta finally turned to face her daughter fully. But they'll have to find me first. I didn't build an empire by being easy to catch. She touched Janelle's cheek, her fingers cool and smooth. Take care of my granddaughter and Janelle. When this is over, perhaps we can try again, without the secrets this time. Footsteps thundered up the stairs, David's extraction team, right on schedule. But before they reached the door, Loretta pressed one final thing into Janelle's hands, a small USB drive. For Aubrey, she said softly. Videos, photos, moments I collected even though I couldn't be there. She should know she was always loved, always protected, even by a grandmother who had to love her from a distance. The door burst open. David's team moved with practiced efficiency, but Loretta was already stepping away, her mask of cool disdain firmly back in place. Goodbye, darling, she said, loud enough for the guards downstairs to hear. Do give my granddaughter a kiss for me, though I doubt I'll see her again, given your penchant for disappearing. They hustled Janelle out through the service entrance, into the waiting van where Michael pulled her close. As they drove away, she caught one final glimpse of her mother through an upstairs window, regal, untouchable, already preparing to play her part in the drama to come. She knew, Janelle whispered against Michael's shoulder. She knew everything. And now we know too. Michael's voice was fierce. The Attorney General will have her evidence. The Winchesters will be exposed, and Aubrey will be safe. Janelle clutched the USB drive, thinking of her mother collecting moments like precious stones, building a legacy of love in secret. What do we do now? Now. Michael pressed a kiss to her temple. Now we go get our daughter, and we start building the life we should have had 5 years ago. As the van sped through the darkness toward safety, toward family, toward a future without shadows, Janelle thought about patterns, the ones that shaped us, the ones we chose to break, and the ones we created anew. Her mother had chosen her pattern long ago, weaving a web of protection and sacrifice that was only now becoming clear. Maybe it was time for a new pattern, one built on truth instead of secrets, love instead of fear, one that finally brought them all home. 3 months later, Central Park was covered in snow, the morning sunlight turning every surface into diamond dust. Janelle stood by the sea lion pool, empty now for the winter, and watched her breath form clouds in the cold air. The park was quiet, peaceful in a way that seemed impossible given the chaos that had erupted in New York's financial district just yesterday. The headlines were still splashed across every newspaper. Winchester Foundation executives indicted, decades of fraud exposed. Adrian Winchester and son arrested in pre-dawn raid and buried in the middle pages. A smaller headline that few would understand the true significance of: Loretta Williams, named key witness in ongoing investigation. Hot chocolate delivery. Michael's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He approached with 3 steaming cups, Aubrey skipping beside him in her pink snow boots and matching winter coat. Their daughter's cheeks were rosy with cold and excitement. "Can we see the penguins after this, Daddy?" Aubrey asked, accepting her cup carefully with mittened hands. The word Daddy now fell from her lips naturally, as if she'd been saying it all her life. "Of course, sweetheart." Michael's smile still brightened every time she called him that. "Though they might be inside today. It's pretty cold." "That's okay." Aubrey took a careful sip of her hot chocolate. "Mrs. Chen says penguins like the cold, and Grandma Rose sent me a new book about them." Janelle smiled at the mention of Michael's mother, who had transformed from a safe harbor into a doting grandmother with remarkable speed. The restaurant upstate had become their regular weekend destination, each visit filled with cooking lessons, family stories, and the kind of unconditional love Aubrey had missed in her early years. Speaking of grandmothers, Michael's voice was gentle as he handed Janelle a newspaper. "Have you read it yet?" She shook her head. "I was waiting. It still doesn't feel quite real." "Read it now, Mommy." Aubrey pressed against her side. "I'll help with the big words." Janelle unfolded the paper, her eyes finding the relevant paragraph immediately. Sources close to the investigation credit Loretta Williams, former board member of the Winchester Foundation, with providing crucial evidence that led to today's arrests. Ms. Williams, who has been working with federal investigators for the past 5 years, reportedly compiled extensive documentation of the Foundation's illegal activities. 5 years, Michael said softly. Everything she did, every move she made, was to protect us. Janelle folded the paper carefully. To protect everyone. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The penguins are lovely this time of year. Perhaps next weekend. If you're amenable to some grandmother-granddaughter time." Janelle showed the message to Michael, who squeezed her hand. "Your call," he said quietly. Aubrey, who had been watching the exchange with careful eyes that missed nothing, tugged on Janelle's coat. "Is that from Grandmother Loretta? The one who sent me the videos?" They had watched the USB drive's contents together as a family. Birthdays Loretta had observed from a distance, dance recitals she'd had filmed, quiet moments in parks and playgrounds, years of love captured in secret, waiting for the day they could be shared. Yes, baby. Janelle knelt down to Aubrey's level. She'd like to meet you properly. Would you like that? Aubrey considered this with the serious expression she reserved for important decisions. Will she tell me stories about when you were little? Knowing my mother, she has albums full of them. Then yes. Aubrey nodded decisively. But can Daddy come too? And Mrs. Chen, and Grandma Rose and Grandpa Robert? Michael laughed softly. I think we can arrange that. Though we might need a bigger table. Janelle typed a quick reply. The Penguins would love some company. Bring those albums you mentioned. Our daughter wants to know everything. The response came immediately. Everything. No more secrets. I promise. They finished their hot chocolate and made their way to the Penguin house, Aubrey between them, holding both their hands. She chatted about her plans for the weekend, showing Grandmother Loretta her new penguin facts, introducing her to both stuffed penguins, now named Waddles and Sir Flips, maybe even getting her to try Mrs. Chen's special dumpling recipe. Inside the penguin house, they found a quiet corner to watch the birds dive and play. Aubrey pressed her face against the glass, completely absorbed. Michael wrapped an arm around Janelle's waist, pulling her close. You know, he murmured, this is where we had our first date. The penguins were your favorite then, too. I remember. Janelle leaned into him. You kept making terrible penguin puns. They were sophisticated ornithological observations. You asked if they were wearing tiny tuxedos to a formal swimming event. He laughed, the sound echoing slightly in the quiet space. And you laughed so hard you snorted your coffee. And fell in love, she added softly. Right here, watching you try so hard to make me smile. Michael turned her to face him, his eyes serious despite his smile. Marry me. Janelle's breath caught. What? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not the sapphire ring from years ago, but something new, something that spoke of fresh starts and chosen paths. I've had this ring for 3 weeks, he said quietly, waiting for the perfect moment. But watching you and Aubrey here, in the place where everything began, I don't want to wait anymore. We've waited long enough. He opened the box to reveal a platinum band set with tiny diamonds that caught the blue light from the penguin tank. Marry me, Janelle. Let's make official what's already true in our hearts. Let's be the family we were always meant to be. Mommy! Aubrey's excited voice interrupted before Janelle could respond. The penguins are dancing. Look! They turned to find 2 penguins engaged in what looked like an elaborate courtship dance, bobbing and weaving in perfect synchronization. Even they're saying yes, Michael whispered. Janelle laughed through sudden tears. Yes, she said, loud enough for Aubrey to turn around. Yes to all of it. Their daughter's eyes widened as she spotted the ring box. Are you getting married? Like in the princess stories. If that's okay with you, Michael said seriously. Aubrey launched herself at them both, nearly knocking them over. Yes, can I be the flower girl? Can I wear a princess dress? Can the penguins come? As they laughed and hugged and began to plan, Janelle thought about patterns again, the ones that shaped us, the ones we chose to break, and the ones we created anew. 5 years ago, she'd stood in this same spot, young and in love and unaware of the challenges ahead. Now she stood here again, stronger for the battles fought, richer for the love tested and proven, complete in a way she'd never imagined possible. Later, as they walked through the snowy park toward home, their home, together, Aubrey skipping ahead with her penguins, Michael's ring warm on her finger, Janelle sent one final text to her mother. We're getting married. All of us together. No more shadows. Will you help us plan it? The response made her smile. Only if you let me buy her that princess dress. After all, every little girl deserves some magic in her story. Magic, Janelle thought, watching her daughter throw snowballs at her laughing father. Sometimes it wasn't in grand gestures or fairy tale moments. Sometimes it was in second chances, in truths finally spoken, in families pieced together with love and understanding and forgiveness. Sometimes it was simply in coming home to the people who had been waiting for you all along. The end. Thanks for watching to the end. Did you like the story? Tell us what you thought in the comments below. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe now for more exciting stories you won't want to miss. Activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. See you in the next story. See you there.